AI large language models can definitely write code. We've seen that functionality in GitHub Copilot. We've seen it in ChatGPT. But how well can they design an API? In this video, we're going to put two of the major models up against each other to see how well they can design an OpenAPI document. We'll take their output, we'll give it a score using RateMyOpenAPI, and then we'll give the model that feedback and see how well they can correct themselves. Whichever one gets closest to 100 will be crowned the winner. The models entering this battle today are ChatGPT 4.0 and Llama 3.1. Let's get into it.
Fight!
So we'll start off with ChatGPT. We've got ChatGPT 4.0 loaded as the model. I'm going to start by pasting in the prompt. We're going to use exactly the same prompt for both the LLMs that we're going to use today. And it says, design an API using the OpenAPI specification for a link shortening application called Minilinks. It must be able to create, update, list, and delete links. All links are connected to specific users, so the ability to create, update, and delete users must also be present. Use good API safety standards as well as JSON schema and include examples. Give me the output as JSON. So let's fire this off and see how it does. Okay, it's finished generating. That was relatively quicker than I thought. So let's copy what it gave us and we'll create a file that we can upload to RateMyOpenAPI and get the score for ChatGPT 4.0. Now, to get a score for the OpenAPI document that ChatGPT 4.0 just created, I'm going to upload it to RateMyOpenAPI using the CLI command. And we can do this with npx remoa lint, and then we pass a file name, which is ChatGPT 4.0 JSON. We need the API key. And because we want to pass the results back into 4.0 so it can have a chance to correct itself, we're also going to get the output here as JSON. Let's try it. So an overall score of 55, not terrible, but also not that great either. Let's take a look at it in the browser and see what RateMyOpenAPI had to say about it. So a score of 55, round about middling. We appreciate the effort. As you can see in documentation, a score of 56, completeness a score of 53, SDK generation a score of 78, which is pretty good, and a security score of 40. All these are warnings though, there are no errors, so it did create a document that would work and is usable, but there's definitely room for some improvements. So let's take this feedback and give it back to 4.0 and see how well it can do to improve it. The actual JSON that we get back from RateMyOpenAPI is really big, so you can't just paste it in. You have to actually save it to a file and then drag it in, and then ChatGPT will be able to work with it. So I have the improvements here, and I can add those in. So say using this JSON document, improve the OpenAPI specification, give me the result as JSON. So there we go, it's finished with its improvements. It's listed what the key changes that it made actually are, which is good. It means it understood the document that it was given. So let's copy this, put it in a file, and give it back to RateMyOpenAPI and see how much the score has improved. Back in Terminal, I've added the JSON for the OpenAPI document that ChatGPT 4.0 created in a file called ChatGPT 4.0-improved. We're going to upload that to RateMyOpenAPI and see how much the score has improved. 96, all in the green. That's a huge improvement. Let's take a look at it in the browser. A round of applause is definitely required here, jumping from an original score of 55 to an improved score of 96. That is a significant difference based on the original generation from the prompt that we put in. As we can see, it's doing extremely well in scores on pretty much every aspect, but it has introduced some errors now which weren't there before. So although it's improved the document, it has actually done some things probably slightly worse than it did before, but a lot more of the key elements that are required in a good OpenAPI document have now been added. So that is a great improvement, massive score, huge jump from where it was to where it is now. Let's bring in our next contestant and see well how Llama does with the same prompt. To submit the prompt to Llama, I'm going to use a service called LobeChat. It's a web-based service that allows you to interface with lots of different LLMs in a hosted manner so that you can converse with them directly through the browser. So let's submit the prompt. Okay, it's done. It was super quick. It's given us a good explanation. So let's copy the JSON that it generated and submit it to RateMyOpenAPI. Here in VS Code, I've created a new file called llama31.json, and I've copied the JSON response that I got back from Llama. So now we're going to submit it to RateMyOpenAPI and see what kind of score it gets. Okay, so an overall score of 47. It's relatively close to the score that ChatGPT 4.0 got. There are some improvements that need to be made, so let's take a look at those in the browser. Documentation got a score in the 50s, which is okay, but definitely could be better. There's some warnings as well as some errors. Completeness is relatively low, so there's definitely some things that you would expect to see that I'm missing here. SGK generation at 62 is kind of okay. But again, you've got errors and warnings and certainly some things that need to be solved. And security's only come in at 30. So there's definitely some things that have been missed completely and some things that have been generated in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense. So let's grab all of this information as one big JSON file and we'll pass it back to Llama to see how well it can improve what it did for us originally. Okay, back in LobeChat, I've taken the JSON response for all of the improvements that RateMyOpenAPI suggested, and I've added it to a JSON file, which I've loaded into the context. So now we should be able to get an improved version back from Llama that will then rescore and see how well it did. Now that it's done with the revision, we can see that it's identified some of the issues that were highlighted by RateMyOpenAPI. It's applied those and created a new version. So I'm going to copy this and pass it back to RateMyOpenAPI to see how much the score's changed. In VS Code, I've created a new file called llama31-improved. This has the new version that was updated by the LLM. I'm going to pass this over now and see what kind of a score we get. We're looking for better than 47, but ideally there should be a relatively significant improvement if it's really understood the information that it was given. So with an overall score of 49, that's only 2 points difference from the original that it generated, which likely means it didn't really understand the information that it was given back from RateMyOpenAPI and couldn't fully parse that, or it hasn't really applied it all the way through the document. It's made some changes to it, but it hasn't really applied them everywhere. You can see from the security score, it's still at 30, which means any of the suggested changes that we had for that just haven't been applied. So it's definitely not been as successful, which in this case does mean that in this battle of the two LLMs, ChatGPT 4.0 versus Llama 3.1, it's ChatGPT that is the winner in this case. Commiserations, of course, go to Llama. Better luck next time. We will test it again and see how well it can do. Stick around and get subscribed as well, because we're going to be doing a whole bunch more of these videos, pitting different AI LLMs against each other to see how well they do when it comes to API design. If you'd like to check out RateMyOpenAPI and try it with your own OpenAPI documents, give it a go at RateMyOpenAPI.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.